During the course of preparing for this conference, Nancy and I listened to a lot of tapes, a lot of CDs. I'm very fortunate. I travel a lot for work, so I go to meetings all over the world. I get to hear a lot of people speak. And I get to see a lot of different kinds of AA work. And it works everywhere. It sounds different, it looks different, different places, but it all works. I deferred to Glenn and asked him to share some of his CDs with us, and it was our great good fortune to be given a CD of Lilly's. And with all the tapes and CDs that we listened to, with all the speakers that I've seen through the years, there was something about Lilly's message that just rung true for me. I'm from here. I'm from New Hampshire. I live in Vermont now. I don't like it much. It's okay. I'm homesick. It's been great to be here this weekend and see everybody and remember how beautiful this place is. But there was something about Lily's message, the small town ethic, the love of where she lives, the appreciation for all that Alcoholics Anonymous has done for her, that just rang true for me. And I felt that her message, shared with all of you, would be a significant experience. Lily is coming up on 18 years sober next month. She still lives in the town that she was born in, and she's made arrangements to be buried there, so she's not moving far from home. She's a small town girl. She's, as we say up here, she's a true Mainer. I hope that she moves you as much as she's moved me. Lily.
Boy, I hope I can live up to that billing. My name's Lilly. I'm an alcoholic. So let's just take a minute and breathe in the Spirit. Can you see my heart beating? My name's Lilly. I'm an alcoholic, and I have a question to ask you. Is there anybody here that was at the conference in 1999 when it was held in South Portland? All you ladies that were from New York that rode the bus. I need to know who you are because I want to talk to you after the meeting. I was asked to speak at that conference, and I was asked to do some other things at that conference too, and I'm going to tell you about some of that tonight. But I was asked to speak at that conference, and it was my very first time speaking at a conference. And I was a nervous wreck that night, but that launched my career. My friends now know me and call me the circus speaker. So I get a lot of respect from them. I want to thank Glenn for passing my CD along for the girls to listen to, and I certainly want to thank Cindy and the committee for a wonderful woman-to-woman conference, and thanks for asking me to come. It's 20 minutes past 8, Saturday night. I stand before you sober and fully clothed. And that, my friends, is a miracle. I've been given instructions by my sponsor at home, whom those friends of mine that are here and know her, I'm sure can't wait to run back and report and let her know whether or not I did as I was told. And she tells me that I have a job to do, that I've been given a gift by God, and that I am to share that gift with you. I'm the girl that in school would not stand up and give an oral book report. But I'm here to share my gift with you, and I'm to let you know that through good sponsorship and working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and doing the deal every day, that Alcoholics Anonymous is alive and well in the grand state of Maine. So it's on tape, Jane. I did not grow up in the dysfunctional family that Gail grew up in, you know. It's hard for me. I did some of the stuff she did, but nobody was kicking me when I was a kid. You know, I grew up in a home that was a very loving home. I was brought up Catholic. I don't have any issues with that. I'm still a Catholic in good standing today. I know you guys, all of you recovering Catholics out there, you know, I know you heard about the punishing God. You see, there's somebody in this room that would be glad to tell you after the meeting that I've had the disease of perception since the day that I was born. Okay, I have disease of perception. You guys all heard that God was going to get you. I heard that God was everywhere and that He loved me. I was good to go. And I was brought up in a home. I have 3 natural brothers and an adopted brother, and I had a mom and dad. My mom stayed home every day. She cooked 3 meals a day. She made homemade dessert every day. My dad came home every day at 4 o'clock. Both of my grandmothers lived with me. I had a very normal childhood. I didn't know until a few years ago that I was poor growing up. We just realized that we were brought up in a village, and I think in New York they call it a project. I don't know, but, we're from Maine. We don't have projects. We have villages, and anyway, so I had this normal childhood. Nobody in my house was getting beat up, and nobody in my house was drinking alcohol, and nobody was getting drunk. And the only drinking that I ever really saw happen in my house was in the summertime when my mother's family used to come, and my cousins would come. But I can remember this wonderful aunt that I just absolutely loved her, but they would drink beer. Now, my mother wouldn't drink beer. She would, cook and clean and do all this stuff, but it wouldn't be anything to have 20 people in the house in the summer. And summer, from Maine. And but I remember this one aunt, she had long red fingernails, and she smoked cigarettes, and she was kind of heavy, and she had great big guys, and she could tell you the worst thing could happen, and she'd tell you the story, and you'd be rolling laughing. I mean, it was incredible. Now, I don't know if she was an alcoholic or not, but I know that she died at 52, Might have had something to do with it. I really don't know. But I really didn't see anybody, even when they had these people come and they would drink beer. Nobody ever got mad. They always were happy. So I didn't really know much about drinking. So I had my first drink of alcohol at the tender age of 19. I know that's old by AA standards. Some of you guys started drinking when you were 2 or 3. I don't know how you remember that. And I had my first drink at 19. And I'm definitely going to need more water. And so anyway, the occasion was my wedding reception. I want to tell you a little story that happened to me 6 months before I had my first drink of alcohol. 6 months before I had my first drink of alcohol, I was a graduating senior, and in the school that I went to, if your date was not a member of the graduating class, they couldn't go to the class banquet. And so his parents invited us to go out to eat, and my parents saved up and got me this beautiful, beautiful dress. Sort of like the pictures you see around this hotel, with a big hoop skirt. And, woo! I never had a dress with a hoop skirt in my life, but I had one that night. I had the white spike heels that went with it. And we went into this restaurant called the Portlander, and they had these menus that were really big, had tassels hanging off from everything. And his dad said, you can have anything you want on the menu. I had never even seen a menu like that my whole life. I never had been in a place like that. But I opened the menu, and I immediately ordered the filet mignon. And when they asked me how I wanted it, I said I wanted it cooked. And so they brought that to me, and it didn't look like much to me, quite frankly. I got to tell you, it really didn't. It looked not like it. Anyway. So I got my fork and knife, and I'm cutting it, and it slid off my plate. And I didn't want his father to think that I was ignorant, so I kicked it under the table. And when he looked up at me, and the only thing left on my plate was baked potato, I said, boy, I was really hungry. And when I got up to leave, when we got ready to leave, I stood up and I realized I had skewered that filet mignon with the heel of my shoe. And so I sort of walked out like Groucho Marx. And I hadn't had anything to drink. 6 months later, I had my first drink, And the occasion was my wedding reception. Once again, a beautiful dress with a big hoop. And we walk in, and the reception was in a place called the VFW, and it was later to become the Sahara Club. In 28 years to the day that I picked up my first drink, I spoke in that room. So I feel like I had come full circle at that point. But this is how it went. We walked up to the bar and Dad said, what are you going to have? I don't know. What are you having? He's having a whiskey and ginger. I'll have a whiskey and ginger. And what I knew about drinking I'd seen on TV. You know, Lucy and Desi were going to cocktail parties and they, you know, they'd say things like, you know, here's to you. And when they said here's to you, you know. So if you've ever drank in a service club, you know what that's like. You know, you get a lot of whiskey and a little tiny bit of ginger. And Dad said, here's to you. And the next thing I remember, I was taking my clothes off on the front lawn of the place. And that's the way it was going to be for me when this little chickie drank. You know, I'd drink and I'd either get in a fight or lose my clothes, one or the other. The man that I married was alcoholic. I didn't know he was an alcoholic. This is how I figured out he was an alcoholic. He used to sit on the floor and drink beer, and he used to sit on the floor and lean up against the chair in the living room. And one night he got up and there was an imprint of his body in beer cans, and I thought, I wonder if he has a drinking problem, you know. And then I said to him to stop drinking, you know, and I didn't know even back then that I had a problem with drinking because he would try to quit drinking, and then I would think, well, you know, he's the one with the drinking problem. I don't have a drinking problem. I can drink. He's the poor sucker that can't drink, you know. So it was totally insane, and of course that marriage did not last, but it lasted long enough for me to have 4 children. I was a little fertile turtle, you know. I just popped them right out, just bim, 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 just like that, you know. Our second child died of SIDS, and on the day that she passed, they went to get him at work, and he was in a bar, and I still did not know that he had a problem with drinking. I mean, I didn't realize. Anyway, we got divorced, and the last night that we spent together, we almost killed each other, and we were in a fight that defies description. I was 6 months pregnant, and he tried to kill me, and I tried to kill him, and if the cops had not come when they did, I would have killed him. He kicked me and broke 5 of my ribs and knocked my front teeth down my throat, and then I burned him with boiling water, and when he went into shock, I pushed him out a second-story window, and when the cops came, I was standing, you have to picture this. Remember the granny robes? Remember those quilted granny robes? I had one of those on. And I was standing on the roof of the house with a vacuum cleaner over my head, bleeding, and I was going to drop the vacuum cleaner on his head and kill the SOB, you know, and because I thought, you know, I could collect Social Security. Now, I did this sober. I did this sober. You know, anyway, needless to say, that marriage ended, and the only marriage I ever had. You know, I got a broken picker, and anyway. So now I realize right off the bat that he's alcoholic. He's not going to be able to support me and the children, and I decide to go to college, and my parents step up to the plate and take care of my 3 kids. And I go to college, and I get out of school, and I was going to buy a house, but my dad came down with cancer, and the doctor said it would be a horrible thing to take his grandchildren away. So I stayed there until my dad passed away, and then I bought a house. I bought this beautiful house. And by now, you know, things were starting to happen for me. I was a gay divorcee, you know. I mean, I was having a good time. I'm out there having a party on the weekend and getting drunk and waking up places I didn't know where the hell I was, you know, and I'm starting to lose my clothes and, you know, go out in like a really nice outfit and come home in a T-shirt and a pair of underpants, and I don't know how that happens. I don't know how does that happen anyway? Anyway, so, as you can see, my drinking is progressing, you know, and here's the deal. I heard people say one time, my husband would talk to his best friend, and they'd say, oh, Friday night we're going to go out and do some serious drinking, and I'd think, man, I want to be a serious drinker. So I didn't ask my husband how to be a serious drinker. I called his best friend. I said, hey, how is it? How do you be a serious drinker? I want to be a serious drinker, you know, because really I was still a lightweight at this point. I only have to have one drink, and I would either be punching you in the face or taking my clothes off. So I say to this guy, you know, how do you be a serious drinker? And he said, well, gee, Lily, for somebody like you, you probably should coat your stomach before you go out to drink. Well, what do you coat it with? And he says, well, a little vegetable oil. So I drank a quarter of a cup of vegetable oil before I went out to drink. Now, if you haven't done that, let me just tell you, you don't need to. It doesn't do anything for you. It just makes it all come up, you know, a lot easier, you know, man, oh man. But I just want you to know that I was dedicated to be a serious drinker. And so we end up divorced, and I buy this house now in Wyndham, and I'm trying to figure out how, I know that now, I don't have anybody to fall back on. I can't ditch the kids with my mother and go off on the weekend and, I got to be sort of responsible here. So what am I going to do? So I'm trying to think of a good idea, and now this is where my pattern develops, where I start getting good ideas. And you know how we get good ideas, don't you? See, she knows. That one right over there, she knows what a good idea is. And so anyway, I thought, well, maybe I'll just get like a 12-pack of beer, and I will place it around the backyard, and then I will mow the lawn. I'll just mow like a few swipes and then have a drink and then, mow a couple more. So I put that plan into action. And, so I did that, and I'd mow a few swipes, and have a beer and then mow a few more and have a few. Amazing thing happened. I drank that whole 12-pack. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. My kids were in the house. Things are looking pretty good. So I started to mow the lawn every day. And when it got to be this time of year, I'm like, now what in the heck am I going to do, So I started raking the leaves. And then in the winter, I shoveled it, and it's all about drinking for me. It was all about drinking. Now, this college education that I got, I put that to good use. I got a job with the federal government. I was a fiscal manager of a program that, we ran about $5 million a year through there, and I was responsible for making sure all those funds went where they were supposed to go. And one day I up and quit that job. Because by now I'm drinking, the amount of booze that I'm drinking, I can't afford to pay for. So if you're a drunk like I'm a drunk, then you know what you got to do. You got to get closer to the booze. And so I quit a perfectly good job to become a bartender. Because, the bartenders get the after shift drink, Well, I got the after shift drink, the before shift drink, the during the shift drink, the make up the drink. Make up a drink and test it drink. You don't want to make sure it doesn't kill anybody drink. You sort of get the idea, So by now, my youngest child is 13 years old. And I get a phone call. And now I'm working in this bar, and I work the happy hour. So that's like from 2 in the afternoon until 6 o'clock at night. And I go to work early because I've got to figure out what drinks we're going to serve today, I have the keys to the place. Lucky me, And so anyway, so I go in there, and one day I get a phone call, and they decide that my son, my 13-year-old son, was selling marijuana at school, and so I did the thing. I got a really good idea. See, I realized that I needed to go to the school to figure out what was going on, so I got this really good idea, and this was my idea. I told all the patrons to make their own drinks, pay for their own drinks, make their own change, and be sure to put a tip in the tip bucket. I was coming back the next day to get my tips, and I left. I left the bar. I left them there making their own drinks. And I ate eucalyptus cough drops on the way to the school, thinking that would cover up the alcohol in my breath. And I got there, and my son was sitting in the chair, and, they said, your son is selling marijuana at school. And I'm going, yeah, how do you guys know, And, we know it's marijuana. And I go, great, well, let's call the chief of police and see what he's got to say about it. I don't know where these ideas come from, but they just sort of drop in, They just drop right in there. And so the chief has to take it and get it analyzed. And by now he's been expelled from school, and we have to go before the school board. And so I get a good idea. We will go to the school board, and we will show the school board. I will show you how to deal with the school board, So now I weigh like 120 pounds. I got the little mini skirt on, long hair down to my waist. Got this little kid by the hand, and then we're going to meet with the school board like Harper Valley PTA, And they tell me that they want the principal. They'll let my son back in school if I let the principal counsel him. And I go, well, I am damn sure not going to let the principal counsel him. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I go, well, he don't know the difference between marijuana and oregano because I had it tested and it wasn't even marijuana, so there you go. He ain't going to counsel my kid, so of course they kicked him out. And we went to an alternative school. And I am here to tell you that I work for that school today, 24 years. But that's not how it started. I dropped him off at that school the day that I left him there. He was very, very small for his age, and this kid had him by the arm, and he was swinging him over his head, going, hey, you're going to love this school. And I was thinking, oh, my God, I've turned this kid over to a bunch of animals, So I went back to my job to get my tips, and, we also, in the big book it talks about the sense of impending doom, but we also have a sense of, they're going to fire your ass, that's it, So we come up with an idea. Before they can fire us, we quit. Because I want to be able to put on my resume that I left to seek other employment. So what? But really, the good idea that was floating around and came into my brain was, my son was acting like an animal, and he needed a zookeeper, and I was signing on for the job. And so I stayed home to take care of this kid. And what happened for me was, it became very apparent to me that in 2 weeks' time, he didn't want to be with me, and I didn't want to be with him. And that's when I began to be a daily barroom drinker. I would go to the bar. I was volunteering in this school, and then I got hired by this school. And I'm going to the bar every day. School gets out at 2:30, and by 3 o'clock I'm at the bar. And I was there without my own permission. And I'm here to tell you tonight that I have just realized that probably the last 8 or 9 years of my drinking, I did not draw a sober breath. And that's only as my brain starts to clear up, and I'm coming up on 18 years. But I realize now that it was 8 or 9 years I did not draw a sober breath. I prided myself when I got here on saying I didn't drink in the morning. I didn't need to. And I was driving school bus, and I was pretty crazy, and I just did crazy stuff. If I just thought of it, I did it, So this is how it happens for me, One day a friend comes over to my house, and I'm having a Bloody Mary. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. That was another lie I told myself, when I got here. I thought, well, I really don't drink in the morning. Well, I don't drink beer in the morning. I drink Bloody Marys in the morning. I drink tequila at night, Anyway. But this woman came. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. I want to know, does she want a Bloody Mary? No, she doesn't. She'd like a cup of coffee. So I made her a cup of coffee. My idea of making coffee was turn the tap water on, hold your finger under the water until you couldn't hold it there any longer. That meant it was hot enough. And then you put a little shot of instant in there, and, off you go. You got coffee. So I take this coffee into the living room, and I give it to her, and she dropped it. And it landed on the carpet, and it just made, you don't think, a cup isn't very much, right, until you spill it on the floor or spill it on the carpet. And she was so nervous, and she's like, oh, my God, Lily, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, it's okay, don't worry. I'll just go right out in the kitchen and get some paper towels. And on the way out there, I got a good idea. I thought, I don't even like that damn carpet. And so what I did was I came back with a pair of scissors, and I knelt down on the floor, and I cut that out, and I opened the front door, and I threw it out. And then, and after that, every time we were going to have a party, we'd cut up another piece of rug, we'd open the door, throw it out. The neighbors would know we were on a roll. They'd stay away from us. Oh, my God. One of my neighbors was a born-again Christian. She came over and tried to save me. Brother Fletcher wants to talk to you. And I'm like, who the hell is Brother Fletcher? And then she'd say things like, and the bell's going to ring and the trumpet's going to blow and there's going to be blood in the bed. And I'm like, oh, grim. That sounds really grim. Oh, man. And this woman, and she's like, we want to save you. And I go, well, I've already been saved. I says, now listen, be home tomorrow. Be home. Be sure you're home tomorrow. And make sure you got Brother Fletcher there, too, because I'm going to show you that I've been saved. And so the next day at 2 o'clock, I put on my little white short shorts and a little red bandana, halter top, I get the front lawn on, I get the lounge chair on the front lawn. I take the speakers and I put them in the window facing out. I crank it up as loud as they go. Elvis Presley singing How Great Thou Art. While I'm sitting on the front lawn drinking Bacardi right out of the bottle. Hey, where's Brother Fletcher now, Ooh. The cops come. They tell me I'm a causation. What the heck is that, That means that you cause things to happen while it really doesn't happen to you. Like I caused car accident, but I really wasn't in it. And but by the time the cops got there, I had a blanket spread out on the lawn and was drinking a jug of wine so that they wouldn't know that I was drunk while I was driving down the road. And the kinds of things that I did to become causations, I would wake up in the morning. By this time in my drinking, I wasn't happy with who I was, and I had to figure out what I was going to do. And so I wake up in the morning, I get a great idea. Today I think I'll be Jimmy Buffett. Or how about Patsy Cline? I loved being Patsy Cline. Patsy Cline was when you got the cowgirl skirt and the vest and the plaid and the cowboy hat, white cowboy boots. Oh, my God. You should have seen my car. It was a 1972 Pontiac Ventura. I don't know what happened to the front seat. But I had a milk crate bolted to the floor with a pillow on it. And, if you're going to be Patsy Cline, then you got to listen to Patsy Cline music, and... Actually, I think that day was Tammy Wynette, because I was doing a mean rendition of Stand By Your Man. And And the cops pull me over, and they have that irritating habit of wrapping their keys on the window. What are you doing? It's like, well, do you want me to tell you the truth or want me to tell you a lie? Well, we'd like for you to tell us the truth. And I said, okay, well, my horse died, and I have just come from burying him. Good idea at the time, So then, all you girls that were here in 1999 know the next story I'm going to tell you, right? You know the story about by now I have a stretch van because I have to buy a vehicle to carry my athletic equipment in because I am now an athlete. So I buy a 23-foot van, and the first thing I do is have an Uga horn put in it and a really good stereo. And my athletic equipment is a set of darts. And what that really was about is that I could have a bed in the back now so I wouldn't have to drive drunk, So I could just pull over wherever I was and take a little power nap in the back of the van. Anyway, in July, one year, it was very hot out in July, I decided when I woke up in the morning I was going to be Al Jolson. So I get all dressed up. I got complete black face makeup, white lips, white gloves, tuxedo. And I pull up in the intersection in the town where I live. And these kids pull up next to me, and they have this really nice car. It's like, got one of them T-roofs, They're listening to their music, and I look over at them. And I think, well, don't they think they're hot stuff, right? So now I got a tape player. I'm dating myself, but I got a tape player. I jam the tape in there. Swanee, how I love you, how I love you. And I'm doing the whole routine, right? And these kids are just like, what's up with that? Well, anyway. So that's where my drinking took me, When you get to the place where you become the it's it, you're in big trouble, So now I'm making the promise that every alcoholic makes to themselves. If you're drunk like I'm a drunk, you made this promise at some point in your life. Tomorrow I won't drink. Tomorrow comes. I don't know how I'm going to be able to do that. I'm sure not telling anybody out loud that I'm not going to drink. Because if I tell you out loud I'm not going to drink and then I drink, you think I'm a loser. And I'm never going to tell you anything that I'm not successful at. So I start making that promise to myself, tomorrow I won't drink. And then tomorrow would come and I'd drink. And I'd think, damn, I wasn't going to drink today, And then I make the next promise that a drunk like me makes. And that is tomorrow I'm not going to drink till 4. And then when you can't live up to that, the next promise becomes tomorrow I won't drink till noon. And then you wake up and you go, the hell with it, it's 4 o'clock somewhere, And that's the way it was, So I'm absolutely certifiably crazy. And I know that I'm in trouble. But I wasn't going to do anything about it, And I'd like to tell you that some of these things that happened to me were the things that helped get me here, but they didn't. I want to tell you some of the prices that I paid. Some of the prices that I paid is that 2 out of 3 of my children became alcoholic because I thought it was a good idea if they were going to drink that they should drink at home. They should drink at home with me where it was safe. The last place they were safe was with me. So my best friend one night we were out drinking, and when I drank, there's a thing in the how it works here. This thing it has here. Our description of the alcoholic and the chapter 2, the obnoxious. That was me. Somebody really read that when I went to my first couple of meetings and I was at home. I said, I didn't have a desire to quit drinking, but there was a lot of people in my life had a desire for me to quit drinking. But this friend of mine said to me one night, she says, Lily, I can't hang out with you anymore when you drink because when you drink, you're obnoxious. And this woman had been my best friend since I was an infant. And I want you to know that I did not say, well, gee, thanks for the insight, and I'll be going to Alcoholics tomorrow, What I said was, F you, who needs you anyway? You always needed me. I don't need you. And that's one of the prices I paid. I look at that today and I think, God, how wounded she must have been. I had no idea. I had no idea that I was wounding her like that, The other thing is that, I get asked to come on these weekends and then I tell my mom that I'm going and she's like, what on earth could you possibly say that those people would want you to come all the way up there? What could you possibly say? And I was telling that tonight, and one of these ladies says, I can't believe you say that with a smile on your face. And I said, Well, of course I can. I said, my mother didn't say. I didn't drink like I drank. I didn't drink like that in front of her. You know, you go to the mandatory family outings and you got to get out of there. You know, there's something wrong with the car. You know, it's going to snow, it's going to rain, it's going to sleet. The car's going to have a flat tire. I'm going to run out of gas. You never stayed there and drank. You had to get someplace where you could drink, you know, and that's what happened for me. And anyway, on the night before my last drunk, I dyed my hair purple. I don't know why I dyed my hair purple. Good idea. Anyway, so this is what happened. I went to the bar and I sat down. I had my last drink on October the 29th, 1989, but I consider my sobriety date to be November the 8th, and this is why. So I went into the bar that night and I told the bartender that I thought I might be an alcoholic, but I wasn't sure, and he should keep the drinks coming while I made up my mind. And then he said, sometime during the night, I said to him, you know, I think when I go out tonight, I'm going to ask God to give me a sign. If I'm really, really an alcoholic, God will give me a sign and I'll quit drinking. This is what happened. I went out that night and I got in the back of my van, and by now I had a bed in the back of my van. I had a Coleman cooler that was always full of booze. I had a change of clothes, a makeup kit. And I got down on my knees by that little bed, and I said, this was what my prayer said. I said, God, please give me 1/10 of the faith that my mother has. And this is what happened for me. The next day, as I said, I was driving bus. Actually, I was driving a van that was the same size as the van that I drove, and sometimes I didn't know if I drove my van to the bar or did I drive the school van to the bar. If I drove the school van to the bar, how was I going to explain that it was there all night? You know, it was just really, I was getting really confused at this point in my life. And anyway, that morning I realized that I was in my van. I took my van home. I got the school van, and I went and started picking up the kids. And I had to drive 25 miles across country. And I started to sweat profusely. And then I got this pain in my chest. And then I got a pain in my arm. And then I got a pain in my jaw. And I'm thinking, I felt that sense of impending doom. And I thought, oh, my God, something really bad is happening to me, you know. But please, please, God, do not let me go off the road with these kids in the car. Please do not let me go off the road. And so what happened for me is this, you know, I managed to get those kids to my school. I got out of the bus, I walked into my office, and I immediately collapsed with a massive heart attack. And I remember waking up in the ambulance thinking it didn't need to be that big a sign. The next thing I remember is that I was in the hospital bed, and that, you know, I was on a stretcher, and it was white, you know, white sheets. And they had called my family in, and I didn't know until after this whole thing was done that, you know, they had told my family they weren't sure if I would even make it. And I remember my brother standing there, you know, and he had baby blue eyes, and he's one of them social drinkers. You know, those are the people that, you know, the ice melts in their drink, you know, those kind of people, irritating people. And but he was standing there that day, and he had big tears in his big blue eyes, and he said, Jesus, what happened? And I said, I don't know, but by God, whatever they're giving me is turning my hair purple. And, you know, these people hadn't seen me for a long time, and I'm looking like 40 miles of bad road, you know, and purple hair and bloodshot eyes, distended liver. I mean, it was pretty insane, you know. And you know, here's the deal. They had a whole team of doctors working on me, and those doctors asked me, you know, how much do you drink? And I told them, and not one of them said, gee, do you think you have a problem with drinking? And I'm thinking, well, maybe it's not that bad after all. You know, they don't seem to think it's too much. And so I was released from the hospital on November the 8th, 1989. I wouldn't even let my family members drive me home because I want to tell you about that beautiful home that I had, that well-manicured lawn. By the end of my drinking, this is what that house looked like. There was no carpet left on the floor in any room in the house. It was down to subfloor. Oh, I should tell you about the Christmas tree, but I don't know. See if I can fit that in after. But anyway, there's no carpet left on the floor. There's punch holes in all the walls. There's punch holes in all the doors. None of the doorknobs worked. There were bullet holes in the windows, you know. There was 13 windows in the house. There were 13 bullet holes in the house. I don't know if I was shooting out, neighbors are shooting in. How does that work? Anyway, you know, that little hole they have in the window. Anyway, I didn't even know there was there until I was 5 years sober, so that lets you know where I was, you know, how long it took for the fog to lift. And the house was destroyed. I didn't know if the clothes were clean or dirty. You know, they were all mixed up together. You know, you just pick out what seemed to be the cleanest thing and wear that. And the dishes were piled up to your eyebrows, and it would be easy to throw them away and buy new stuff. And, you know, it was totally insane. You know, everything was a shambles. The place was a shambles. So I get home on November the 8th. I have somebody bring me home and drop me off the end of the driveway. And they drive off. And I go up to my house, and there's a note on the door from the bank, and they're foreclosing on my house. And I'm 6 months behind in my mortgage payments. And there's no heat in that house, and there's no lights in that house. There's no telephone in that house. There's no running water. There's no groceries, and there's no kids. Everything had been shut off. And I went to the bar. And I sat at the bar, and I ordered a shot of tequila and a beer chaser. And I looked up, and I doctored my hand all up to do that shot. And I looked up, and there was a mirror behind the bar. And I saw myself, and what I saw scared the hell out of me. And a thought that quick, like that. Oh, my God, you are a hopeless, helpless, pathetic, drunk mother. And your kids deserve better than this. And I put the drink down, and I walked out of that place. The next day I went to work. There was a woman at my work that was very, very courageous. She had taken the time to write me a letter, and she said, Lily, I want you to take this letter home and read it. And I took the letter home, and in the letter she said that everybody that I worked with loved me very much, and the kids loved me very much, and it was breaking their heart to see what was happening to me. And she suspected that I had a problem with alcohol, and the reason that she knew that was because she was a member in good standing of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thought, what a bitch. How dare she? You know. Well, the next day I went back to work again, and she says, well, I'd like to take you. Why don't you come to my house for dinner tomorrow night, and we'll go to a meeting. And I said, yeah, okay, great. And I got home, and I thought, well, I ain't going to no stupid meeting. Oh, the other thing I need to tell you, that the same day that I got the letter from that woman, I had an appointment with my regular physician, and my regular physician said to me, Lily, you had a massive heart attack as a direct result of your use and abuse of alcohol, and we want you to know, I'm here to tell you, that when we did the test on your heart, we realized that you have third-stage cirrhosis of the liver, and if you don't quit drinking, you'll be dead in 5 years, and if you can't quit on your own, you ought to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And that was twice in one day I heard Alcoholics Anonymous, and I still didn't want to come here. You know, forget that. I mean, I didn't even know what AA was. I thought it was like the people you call when your car broke down. And, you know, if the drunks find out how friendly you guys are and that you'll pick them up anyway, you might be giving a lot of people a ride home anyway. This is what happened. As it got closer and closer to the time to go to her house, I knew I wasn't going to go because that's the kind of drunk I am. You know, I'll sit on the bar stool and promise you the moon. You know, I'll do this. Oh, I'll help you move. Oh, I'll help you do this. Oh, let me sew you a new outfit. Oh, let me do this. Oh, let me do that. Well, try and find me when it's time to do that stuff, you know, because I've gone on to a different bar. You know, I've moved on. You know, I've moved out of that bar stool and on to another one, you know. And I started drinking at places like the Top of the East and ended up at places called the Dump on the Hump, you know. And at the Dump on the Hump, they're not counting how many drinks you're drinking. Anyway, here's where that prayer, you remember that prayer, 1/10 of the faith that my mother had? This is what happened. I heard my mother's voice in my head say, Lily, if you're not going to go, call her. It would be really rude if you didn't show up. And I went to the phone to pick up the phone and call her, and the phone was dead. And it never occurred to me to go to a phone booth and call this woman up and say, I'm sorry. So I drove 15 miles to her house to tell her that I couldn't come. She said, come right in. And she had a gift for me. It was all wrapped up, beautifully wrapped. I unwrapped it, and it was a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the blue book with the big white letters. And I thought, how in the hell am I getting out of this, you know? And inside the front cover, she had written, to Lily, my friend with love, may you someday know how important this day is to me. Fasten your seatbelt and welcome to the greatest adventure of your life, one day at a time. And off we went to our first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'd like to tell you that I sat in that meeting and was with open arms, joyful. Oh, I'm so happy to be here. What happened was I walked into the smoke-filled room. There was a little guy standing at the out by the door. He sort of looked like he had Parkinson's disease to me or something. He was sort of shaking, and he stuck his hand out, and he said, welcome, you're amongst your own kind. And I thought, like hell I am. You know, and then the next guy I saw was this great big tall guy with a shock of white hair, and he had this belt buckle. He was so tall that the belt buckle was right about my eye level, and it said bullshit. And he said the same thing, welcome, you're amongst your own kind. And then he's a big toothy grin. He goes, and it just keeps getting better every day, every day. And I am looking around the room thinking, boy, I have sunk to an all-time low now. What a bunch of losers. You know, oh, my God. So this is what happened that very first night. This is what happened. The miracle happened for me that very first night. This lady got up. She gave a wonderful talk. I don't know what she said. I heard them read the chapter to the obnoxious. I got that. And then she said something really queer. She said, here at the Portland Group, we have a way of helping you start a new way of life by offering you a white chip. And she held up this white poker chip. And I'm sitting in the third row, and I'm thinking, you got to be shitting. You don't drink, and they pay you off in poker chips? Oh, wow. This is going to be great. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play, you know. I'm thinking, I mean, I'm like over the top now. What I didn't know, and I didn't know until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, is that I've been driven by 1,000 forms of fear all my life. All my life. I didn't know that till I got here. And this is what happened that night. The next words that woman said were the words that were going to save my life. She said, if you're too afraid to pick up a white chip, see me after the meeting. And I thought, here I am, sitting in a room full of losers, and they think I'm afraid of them? I don't think so. So I marched straight up there and got that white chip, you know. And something amazing happened. You guys started to applaud. And then this beautiful woman came up to me, and she said, oh, Lilly, congratulations, and keep coming back. And my disease of perception, I heard her say, we need you, you know. And so I started coming back one meeting a week. You know, I'm white knuckling it. You know, I don't know quite how to do this. You know, I read the book the first day, cover to cover. You know, because I'm not drunk. You know, I'm going to read the whole thing, get everything they got, and then I'm going to go back and teach them how to do it. And oh man, what a sick cookie, you know. I was lucky, though. You know, I got a sponsor. The woman that I picked was somebody that I drank with. So, because I was very clever. I read those steps the first night. I picked and chose the ones I was going to do. I thought, well, I won't have to do a fourth and fifth because she already knows me. She already knows all the crap I did. And then I was thinking about going back out and drinking. And this was, I mean, that first 30 days was brutal for me. And they have, in Maine, I don't know if they have it anywhere else. I'm sure they probably do. But in Maine, the 30-day chip is a red chip. And I called it the blood chip. And by God, I was ugly because I'm coming to these meetings and you guys are so serious. You're talking, you know, I come to meet you, we go cunning, baffling, powerful, terminal, fatal. I'm thinking, lighten up. Oh my God. I'm never going to laugh again. These people are so serious, you know. So my 30-day, I'm going to go get my 30-day chip, and I got a good idea. You know, so I'm going to go to that meeting, and I'm going to sit in the front row, like they've been telling me. Sit in the front row. You're sick. You got to sit in the front row. And the reason that, you know, if you don't know why you have to sit in the front row, I'll tell you why you have to sit in the front row. Because if you're a drunk like I'm a drunk, and you're sitting in the back row, you want to know, what is that she's got on? How did she get her hair like that? I wonder if that guy's single. I wonder who they're talking about over there, you know. So we have to sit in the front row because it ain't none of our business, you know. And I still have to sit in the front row, you know, because I still want to know how you got your hair like that, you know. Anyway, so I'm going now to get this blood chip. And I'm sitting in the front row. And this, all of a sudden, it's Christmas time, you know. This woman gets up to the podium. She's got on a Hawaiian shirt. She has a Christmas tree on her head. And the thing is blinking and playing jingle bells. And she says, hi, everybody, my name's Ricky, and I'm an alcoholic. And if I don't drink between now and May 1st, I'll be sober 15 years. And I was sitting right in front of her, and I went, yes! You're crazy! You know? And she just smiled, you know. And after the meeting, I went up and I grabbed her shirt and I went, oh, God, is there hope for me? I mean, you're the first person I saw that even smiled. And she was like, oh, dear, it's all right. It's just your eyes. It's your disease of perception, you know. I was so sick of hearing that, you know. Anyway, so I got a good sponsor and I started working the steps right away. And now I want to tell you some things that have happened to me since I got sober. I want to tell you all a little story about Liz Bailey. You all you girls from New York, you know Liz Bailey, right? So I get asked to speak at the Florida State Convention, and I go down there, and all these people, like when I first got sober, I used to belong to the Tape of the Month Club, and I'd get these tapes, and I'd sit down on Sunday morning, and I'd smoke cigarettes and drink a pot of coffee, and I'd listen to these CDs, right? Or tapes back then. And it'd be like Liz B. and Keith L. and Sandy B. and Jack C. and all these people. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, they were so powerful to me, so powerful. And now I get asked to speak at the Florida State Convention, and I go down there, and who do you think is there to speak? Liz B., Keith L., Jack C., and I'm sitting in the front row thinking, oh, my God, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? I'm a drunk from Maine. What am I doing here? So I lean over to Miss Bailey, and I say to her, Liz, I'm scared to death. And she says to me, oh, you don't have to be scared, honey. And I said, well, do you have any words of wisdom? And she said, oh, yes, I do. And so I lean right over. I want to get those words of wisdom, you know. She says, I always go pee before I speak. That way, I know I'm not going to pee my pants in front of everybody. And I think, good idea. So, this conference, there's 3,000 people at this conference. And this woman, there's a big foyer. It's like this room here. But it went all the way to the back of it. I mean, that's how big it was. And it was jam-packed full of people. And at the end of that foyer, there's a bathroom. So I go right in there. I open the door. I go right in the first stall. I do a little tinkle. I pull the toilet paper, comes right off the roll, goes underneath the door. And then somebody opens the door to the foyer, and the toilet paper rolls out into the foyer. And I come back and I sit down to Liz B. and I go, I don't think that's going to work for me. I've had some wonderful, wonderful things happen in AA, and I want to tell you, some of the other things that, I'm not going to promise you that when you come to AA that it's just a cakewalk. We just go through life. Everything's hunky-dory. Nothing bad ever happens to us. God shined his light on us little elkies. And we're here to tell you, it's just a wonderful thing. As I said, 2 of my 3 children went on to become active alcoholics. And early on when I got to AA, my children were pretty well grown by the time I got here. And my sponsor said to me, you have no excuse not to be involved in service work. And your first service job should be when you're off in the summer, because I work for the school department, you should volunteer at the CSO hotline. And so I went down and I worked in the central service office and learned how to do 12-step calls and learned about the traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. And one day the phone rang and my daughter was on the other end of the line. And I don't recommend that you 12-step your own kids, but that's how it happened for me, And I said to the director at the time, I don't know what to do. And he said, of course you do. You go and you get another woman and you go and sit on the edge of the bed. And you tell her that if she does as you have done, she'll never have to drink again. And that's what I did, And she is a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous today. And she doesn't seem to need meetings as badly as I do. I mean, she's got like this unbelievable, uncanny gift, and she sure as hell didn't get it from me, let me tell you that. But she just is calm. She's calm. She's a good mother, and she doesn't seem to need to come to meetings as much as I do. And it amazes me that, she just lives this great life and is a wonderful mother and has 2 beautiful children, my grandchildren, and if there's anything that I'm good at today, it's being grandma. I'm a good grandma today. I was a terrible mother. I stand before you to tell you that, I thought that I was this wonderful mother, and at the beginning, I had the big S on my chest. I was Superwoman. I didn't need anybody. I could do it all by myself. Thank you very much. And what I did was I became an alcoholic, and because of the disease of alcoholism, when my kids needed me the most, I was there the least, And my youngest son, that kid that was 13 that they thought was selling marijuana in school, began on the road with his disease. And I want to tell you that it's my personal belief that it's the hardest thing you will ever, ever, ever do is watch somebody that you love dying from the disease of alcoholism. My son and I danced a dance for 13 years that I wouldn't wish on anybody. It was awful. And I thought, this is the thing. If you're a drunk like I'm a drunk, and if you're a drunk mother like I'm a drunk mother, and if you have a kid out there that's in the throes of their disease, I want to tell you what I learned. This was a hard pill to swallow. But what I learned was all those times that I went and bailed him out of jail, that I thought I was doing this for him. I was saving him from himself. The truth of the matter is this. It was all about me. It was all about me looking good. Because, you see, if you read my kid's name in the paper and knew what he was up to, you'd think I was a bad mother. That's how twisted alcoholism is. Because, you see, I was sitting on a bar stool every day telling you about this wonderful life I had while I had a kid that was so far in trouble and so needy. And I couldn't help him other than run with a checkbook. And it wasn't until I came to the halls of Alcoholics Anonymous that you people taught me how to grow up. You taught me how to walk with dignity and grace. And you told me things about me and my son and my relationship with him that were sick. And that I needed to fix that. And that I needed to go to Al-Anon. And that I needed to get help. And I did that, you know. And I became a tough love mom. And I got to tell you that it's very heartbreaking. It's very heartbreaking to go to prison and see your child there, especially when it's your baby. Nobody wants to see their kid in prison. And that's where he was. But then sometimes I'd go there and he'd have that cocky jailhouse attitude. You know, he'd sit there like, my civil rights are being violated and that thing. I want to be the one to kill you. You know, I want to be the one to kill you. You know, and then I'd love him and then I'd hate him and then I'd want to be the one to kill him. And it was all so insane, you know, it was all so insane. But I learned here to get tough, and I learned to stick by, to say what I meant, to mean what you say what you mean, but don't be mean when you say it. And, you know, and I had to tell this kid, I'd come out of there, and I'd be shaken, and I'd want to drink, and I'd call my sponsor, and she'd say, how you doing? And I'd say, I just want to drink. And she said, you can't go there anymore. This is totally ridiculous. You need to protect your sobriety, and you need to let him know that you can't come there anymore. And it was the hardest thing I ever did. And I want to tell you that, you know, my son called me one night and told me that he was going to kill himself. And I, to this day, want you to know that it was the voice of God that came out of my mouth, because that voice said, I am so sorry that you have to do this to yourself. But if you kill yourself, go knowing that I love you. There's a way out. It's called Alcoholics Anonymous. I hope you find your way there. And I hung up the phone, and I waited for them to call me back and tell me that he'd killed himself. If he were here today, he'd tell you he wasn't going to kill himself. He's an alcoholic. He's selfish like I am, you know. He's just trying to figure out another way to roll me over and bowl me over, you know, because that's what we do. In March of 2001, in March of 2002, I was asked to speak at a convention in Cape May, New Jersey. And I called, my middle boy was my superhero. You know, he was the kid that did everything right. You know, he is a true product of alcoholics, you know, of an alcoholic family, because he saw what I was doing and he didn't want a part of that. You know, he didn't want to be like we were. You know, and this is what happened. You know, I got a phone call to go to Cape May, New Jersey to speak at a convention, and I called my son and I said, Sam, I'm going to speak at a convention in Cape May, New Jersey. This is the kid that said in high school that he wanted to be a Marine, and he went on to become a Marine. And he was the Marine of the cycle. And then one day we went to Washington, D.C. I wished I could tell you I was sober when I did that, but I wasn't. I was drunk. But I took this kid to Washington, D.C., and he said to me, Mom, someday I'm going to be a police officer here. And I said, oh, sure you are, honey, sure you are, you know. And he got out of the Marine Corps, and he went to work for the Department of Defense, and his job was to guard foreign dignitaries. And he guarded people like Paul McCartney, and he guarded Pope John. And that was the only time in my life. My mother often watches the Catholic channel, you know, she's always like, you know, when the Pope's on, you know, I got to be quiet, you know, the Pope's on. But we knew that he was guarding the Pope that weekend, and because he'd call us out and he'd say, well, you know, I'm going to be guarding so-and-so, but he couldn't say who so-and-so was, but if we read the paper, we'd figure out who it was. And so that day we're watching it, and they're showing the Pope, and my mother says, you think they'd show the audience more, you know, because she wanted to see her grandson protecting the Pope. And then he called one day, and he said that he had just had the greatest honor of his life. He had been embraced by Mother Teresa. And he worked in a place called Anacostia in Washington, D.C., which is a very high crime area. And so I called him and I said, Sammy, I'm going to be speaking at a convention in Cape May, New Jersey. And he said, hey, Mom, that's great. I'll take the ferry across from Delaware and I'll meet you there. And he came there, and I hadn't seen him for 2 years. And when all that stuff happened on September 11th, 2001, it was the first time in my life I was ever worried about him, you know, because he couldn't get to me and to let me know he was okay. And I really wasn't afraid that he'd be killed. I was afraid of the horror that he was going to see that day, you know, and as a police officer. Anyway, he met me in Cape May, and we had a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and we raced to the top of the Cape May lighthouse, and we took our shoes off, and we went running into the water, and everybody there thought we were nuts, but we were like, well, it's like the ocean in Maine in summertime, and we had a wonderful time, and he heard me speak for the very first time, and after I spoke, he came up to me, and he said, Mom, he says, I don't know how you do that. He says, I don't know where you got that gift, he said, but I think you should keep on doing it, because those people in the room were touched by what you had to say. And 6 weeks later, I got the phone call that no mother wants to get. Yeah, Sammy died very unexpectedly. He was fine on Monday. He called me on Monday night. Hey, Mom, what you doing? I'm watching TV. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And we shot the crap. And, how you doing, honey? And I'm doing okay. And how you doing, Mom? I'm doing okay. And the last words we said to each other was, he says, I love you, Mom. And I said, I love you too, Sam. And the next morning at 10 minutes to 2, my phone rang, and they told me Sammy was dead. And I waited as long as I could, and then I made one phone call. I called my friend Patty in the morning, and it's hard to get those words out of your throat. But she knew something bad had happened. I could hardly get the words out of my throat. But, the next thing I know is that after that phone call, I was completely surrounded by the women in this fellowship. They were incredible. They came to my house. They just picked me up. They stood me on my feet. They pointed me in the right direction. They said, you put one foot in front of the other. Lily, you walk with dignity and grace. And that's the tribute that you pay to your son, because that's what he'd want you to do. And, my son had a hero's funeral. They all came from Washington, D.C. All these police officers came, and they brought his cruiser. And, geez, I got help now. And when we got to the funeral home, and there were so many people there, it was incredible. And, I really believe it's because I had done so much service work in AA. I mean, it was like the whole state of Maine showed up. It was incredible. And we were there, and his partner came up and embraced me, and he said, my God, Lily, I've never seen anything like this. He said, I've never seen anybody with so many friends. And I said to him, I know, and they couldn't all come. And he goes, I beg your pardon? And I said, well, they wanted to come. I said, but when they got here and saw all these cruises, they kept on going. Then we rode up and down the streets of South Portland in those cruises, where they have these microphones that you can talk to people on the street. And we thought that was pretty cool. And then I didn't know that. And we buried him the day before my birthday. And the day before Mother's Day, I was in Washington, D.C. for a blue mass for my son. And well, it wasn't really a mass. They said that's what it was going to be. So I decided I'd go because, it's going to be a mass. I got to go. And they called me and they said, would you deliver the eulogy at your son's funeral? And I'd been taught in AA that whenever anybody in AA asks you to do anything, the answer should be yes. And so immediately I said yes. And then as soon as I hung up, I thought, what? So then the next thing that happened is my whole family is on a train from New Haven, Connecticut to Washington, D.C. We look like the Keystone Cops, I'm telling you. Christ, we're going in one door and out the other, and my mother's stuck in the elevator. And, she's handicapped. She's in a wheelchair. And my big brother, who is just a goof of the family, he's just sort of this big oaf. Don't ever give him anything to do. He's just a really nice guy, but don't give him anything to do because he'll screw it up. And he's got her stuck in the elevator, and I'm in the thing, and the conductor's screaming at me, going, you're holding up the whole train. And my brother's going, excuse me, but the captain or the chief of police of the Metropolitan Police Department has asked us to come to Washington, and he said if we need any help, we should call him. Should I make that call now? And this guy's like, what the hell is going on, And we're like running in and running out, and suitcases going here and there and everywhere. I'm thinking, oh, geez, what a nut bin, So anyway, we get there. Oh, I got to tell you this story because you guys will love it. So we get there, and oh, God. So the next day, we get there, and the next day they're going to have this service for my son, which I think is a mass, but it's not really a mass. It's like in this little church in the community where he worked. But they have a it's not a parade. I mean, you wouldn't call it a parade at a funeral, would you? I mean, what would you call it? I don't know what you'd call it. But anyway, they got all these cars. Yeah, that's it, what she said. And so I mean, they got all these cop cars lined up. And on both sides of the road, as far as you can see, there are police officers dressed in blue. And they all have their hats off, and they're saluting. And we go down, and we get to the church, and the chaplain comes out, and he says, he helps me out of the car, and he says, "Are you ready?" And I said, "I think so." And I get out, and I walk into this little white church in this little predominantly black community, and I see these mothers coming in with little kids. And I walk into the church, and now I'm a nervous wreck. And I walk in, and guess what? The carpet on the floor is purple. And they have a white piano in the front of the church, and they have the worst picture I ever saw of my son in my life on this piano, and I'm thinking, oh, my God. And then they had this friend of my son's got up, and he did this thing like, so I guess you'd call it like a eulogy, except he was going, "There's going to be joy in the valley." And I'm like, whoa, man. And I mean, he was like unbelievable. Like, I never seen anything like that in my life. The whole time I'm thinking my son's probably going, "Hey, Mom, how do you like this?" And there was this black woman that was the minister. And I got to tell you, this is my disease of perception, right? Like, here's my chest and the rest is coming. She's got these glasses, and they have like little rhinestones on them right here. And here I am, the grieving mother, sitting in the front row, and I'm thinking, boy, I'd like to know where she got them glasses, because I like them, And I'm telling you, the men in my son's precinct took up a collection, and they had this made for me, and it's my son's badge in gold. And I'm here to tell you today that, I'm not a sad woman. I am not a woman that allows heartbreak to take over my life. I believe that the tribute that I give to my son is the fact that I still continue to do this work. And I believe that this is my gift. God gave this to me, and He'll take it away when He's done with me, But in the meantime, He's given me the opportunity to come and spend time with all of you and let you know, that not everything good happens in AA. There's some hard stuff that's going to come your way. But I'm going to tell you what, if you know, and if you socialize with the women and how we hated them when we got here, but they're the ones that are going to hold you up no matter what. No matter what, they're going to hold you up. And I have a great life. I live in the home that I was brought up in as a child. I moved into that home 9 years ago. My mother's 89 years old, and at that time, back then, she had a very dear friend, and when both of their husbands died, they moved in together so they could afford to still be sort of independent. And 9 years ago, her friend had to go in a nursing home, and I knew my mother couldn't stay there by herself. And I asked her what she wanted, and she said, "I want to go out of here feet first." And I said, "I'm going to try to make that happen." And I moved in to take care of my mother, and I consider that an honor and a privilege. I'm going to tell you a couple of stories about my mom. The women in my neck of the woods in AA know my mom. They know her very well. They love her. And Ricky, my dear friend Ricky, used to throw birthday parties for herself. And one time she invited me to go to the birthday party, and I said, "Gee, Ricky, I'm sorry, I can't go." I said, "I'm going to be out of town that weekend. I'm going to be off speaking somewhere." And she said, "Well, I've invited your mother, and I've made arrangements with your sponsor, Jane, to pick her up and bring her to the party." So I said, "Okay, great." So my mother went to the party, and they'd come up, and the people would introduce themselves. They'd say, I'm Lucy, I'm an alcoholic, and I'm Ellen, and I'm an alcoholic. And my mother would say, "Well, I'm May, and I'm Lily's mother." And then somebody else would introduce themselves, and they'd so-and-so. And she'd say, "And I'm May, and I'm Lily's mother." And then somebody asked her how much recovery she had. And she said, 3 years. Now, I'm away, right? So I come back, and my friend Tom calls me. And he says, "Hey, Lily, what's going on with your mother?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, I was at Ricky's birthday party, and first she's introducing herself going, I'm May, I'm Lily's mother. Everybody else has introduced themselves as an alkie, and she's going, I'm Lily's mother." And he goes, Pat, I'm perplexed because at one point somebody asked her how much recovery she had, and she said 3 years. So she's sitting in a chair next to me in the living room, and I go, Mom, why did you tell those people you had 3 years of recovery? And she said, well, I had my knee done 3 years ago. You know? And I sponsor a lot of girls, and my mom always knows where I am. I mean, my mom knows that I'm in this hotel this weekend. She knows that if she needs me, that I'm right here, you know. And when I go to meetings at home, she'll know. Like, somebody will call, and she'll say, oh, it's Wednesday night. Oh, well, Lily's at a meeting, and that meeting gets over about 8. She'll be home around 8:30. Are you okay? Well, you could read pages 60 to 62 in the big book. Now, she's probably having a gin and tonic while she's telling them that, you know. Okay, this is my last story before I sit down. It's about that disease of perception. In 1999, Bonnie was the chairperson of the Woman-to-Woman Convention, letting go absolutely. So, of course, you know, she calls her friends, Lilly and Patty, and we all go to this meeting. You know, she's going to have a meeting to get it all organized. And she goes, Lilly, you and Patty are in charge of the entertainment. I have a disease of perception. I thought she said, you are the entertainment. Then they said, you know, those ladies from New York, they really dressed to the nines on Saturday night. And I'm thinking, well, Lottie freaking does. I can get dressed up on Saturday night. I don't know nothing from nothing. It's a disease of perception, right? So Patty and I, off we go to Goodwill to get ourselves some prom gowns so that we could be dressed up on Saturday night, right? So on Saturday night, and Patty was so happy. She calls me up and she goes, Lily, you're never going to believe the gloves I got for us to wear. She had these white gloves that come up to here. They were sort of like made out of lycra or spandex or something. They were like girdles for your arms, you know, and we had plastic tiaras, and my gown was made out of chintz, and I sort of looked like a chintz couch, and she looked like Lucille Ball. And so we coming down in the elevator, and, you know, we want to make a grand appearance because we know that you're all going to be in the ballroom, so we want to come in just a little bit late so we can make an appearance, you know. So we like coming down in the elevator, we got our little plastic tiaras on, and what do you think? Do I look okay? Oh, yeah, you look great. Do I look all right? Oh, yeah, you look great, you know. So, and these two guys get on the elevator, and they go, we don't know where the hell you're going, but we want to go with you, you know. So we're going to make a grand appearance. We go outside, you know, and we're going to sneak in on you, you know. We're going to go through the bushes and sneak in on you. And we come in, and you guys all cheer. And then our mouths drop. You guys are all dressed like all those ladies that take the bus. They got these African-American native, oh, my God, they were gorgeous. And here we were thinking, you know, you were going to be sort of like dressed up, like, you know, like with a dress and, you know, like, you know, some pants and stuff. And, you know, anyway. So now, and I say to Patty, are we supposed to take these gloves off when we eat? And she goes, no, keep them on, you know. So now we're buttering the rolls, and, you know, we got butter stains all over the ground. Oh, yeah. So, and then, you know, the banquet's over, and now it's time for the entertainment. And Patty and I got up and sang to you, Who's Sorry Now? And then she went behind this little curtain, and she dressed up like Brenda Lee, and somebody else was Patsy Cline, and guess who I was? I was Elvis. And Patty came hollering at me, and she goes, Lily, you better hurry up and get that costume on. Those ladies are waiting for the entertainment. So I went in the bathroom, and I put my contacts in, and I got them in backwards, and, you know, so now my eyes are sort of like... And I'm behind this little curtain, you know, like, and this is our dressing room. It's right in the main ballroom, like a little curtain. And I'm trying to, like, hop into a jumpsuit, you know, but now I look like I do now, you know. And I'm trying to hop into this little Elvis costume. And I'm screaming, I'm going, now, Patty, you know, we practiced this. You just got to push the button. She goes, I don't know about the button. And my friend Brenda's running around. She's like a little chicken with a head. She didn't know what button to push. And I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, just push the effing button. Yeah. And then the lights go down, and there I am on the stage singing Heartbreak Hotel. And that was sober, girls. She said, you're in charge of the entertainment. My disease of perception said, you are the entertainment. So that's what you got. So I'll close with this story. I just want to let you know that young son of mine that ended up in prison and went in and out and in and out and in and out is a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous today with 8 years of sobriety. 16 months ago, his daughter was born on the 72nd founding of the anniversary of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I think that's a miracle. That's the frosting on the cake, And right now, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that he's going through a rough time in his marriage. They've hit a big obstacle, and they're talking that big D word, and it's scaring me and breaking my heart, So I'd ask all of you tonight to remember my son and his family in your prayers. And I want you all to know that I come here with honesty, with an open heart, with love. And when I first came to the halls of Alcoholics Anonymous, there was a song that was number one. It was by Bette Midler. And in that song, she said the same thing that I'm going to say to you right now. Thank you, thank you, thank God for you. You are the wind beneath my wings. Thank you.